The sky had turned black with heavy clouds. The air was thick with the smell of rain. Thunder rolled across the alien valley, echoing between the mountains like the growl of a giant beast. The rivers that cut through the settlement had grown wild, rising higher and higher as if angry at the world. Jack, a human traveler, had come to this colony only to trade supplies. He never planned to stay, never planned to get involved in anyone's problems. But now he was running through streets already filled with knee-deep water. Around him, alien families screamed, rushing for safety, their glowing eyes wide with fear. The flood had come too fast. The barriers of the colony were breaking one by one. Wood and stone washed away in the rushing current. Jack splashed through the chaos, searching for higher ground, but every road seemed swallowed by water. That's when he saw her. A tiny alien girl, small even for her kind, clinging to the broken remains of a pillar. The water pulled at her fragile body, threatening to drag her under. Her pale skin shimmered faintly in the stormlight, and her silver hair plastered against her cheeks. She looked no older than a teenager, her lips trembling as she cried out, but no one heard. Everyone else had already run, leaving her behind. Jack hesitated only a moment. He could keep running, save himself, pretend she was not his problem. But something inside him refused. His boots splashed deeper as he fought the current, pushing toward her with all his strength. Each step felt heavier, as if the water itself wanted to claim him too. "Hold on," Jack shouted, his voice nearly drowned by thunder. The girl lifted her head, her glowing eyes locking on him, full of fear and disbelief. No human had ever spoken to her like that before. No human had ever cared. He reached her just as her grip slipped. With one strong arm, Jack pulled her up, holding high, air against his chest as the flood smashed against them both. She was shivering, whispering something in her alien tongue, her voice weak like fading music. He didn't understand the words, but he understood the fear. The nearest building, half collapsed, stood like a wounded giant in the water. Jack dragged her toward it, forcing his body through the rushing current. They climbed through a broken window, landing in the dark. Water poured in after them, rising fast, filling the chamber. The girl coughed, hugging herself, her soaked clothes clinging to her tiny frame. Her alien markings glowing faintly on her arms flickered like dying stars. Jack pulled her close, trying to warm her, even though he was just as cold. "We're not safe here," he muttered, scanning the collapsing walls. "We have to move up or the water will take us both." The building groaned around them, stone grinding against stone. Every sound made the girl flinch, her wide eyes watching the ceiling as cracks spread. Jack lifted her, placing her on a ledge above the waterline. Then he hauled himself up beside her, his muscles burning with exhaustion. The chamber shook, a thunderous crash sending a wave that nearly swept them away. A massive piece of the ceiling collapsed, sealing the entrance completely. Now they were trapped inside, surrounded by rising water and darkness. The girl gasped, clutching his arm with surprising strength for her size. Jack stared into the shadows ahead, his jaw tight, his heart pounding. There was no way back, no way out, only deeper into the ruins. And so, with the flood roaring outside and death waiting within, a human and an alien girl found themselves bound together by fate. Their story had just begun. The chamber was silent except for the sound of rushing water echoing through cracks in the stone. The flood outside roared like a hungry beast, but inside the ruin, the air felt heavy, trapped, almost alive. Jack pressed his back against the damp wall, holding the tiny alien girl close so she would not slip into the rising water below. Her small body trembled violently, her lips pale, her glowing eyes darting around in fear. She whispered something in her language, the words soft and fast, almost like a prayer. Jack could not understand, but he heard the terror in her tone. "I don't know what you're saying," he muttered, his voice low and steady, "but I'll keep you safe." The girl froze, staring at him, her eyes widening as if she could not believe his promise. For her people, humans were known as outsiders, cold and selfish. Yet here was one, risking everything for a stranger he had never met. The water sloshed higher, reaching the ledge they sat on. Jack looked upward, spotting a narrow crack in the collapsed ceiling that seemed to lead deeper inside. It was their only choice. "Come on," he said firmly, lifting her into his arms again. Her hands clutched at his soaked shirt, weak but desperate. She did not resist as he carried her toward the opening. The passage was dark and narrow, the stone wet and slippery. Jack pushed forward, feeling the weight of both fear and responsibility on his shoulders. Behind them, the water kept rising, chasing them like an unseen predator. Every step echoed strangely, the sound bouncing off walls in ways that made the place feel haunted. At one point, the girl tugged at his sleeve, pointing to the wall. Strange markings glowed faintly there, ancient runes carved long before either of them were born. Her voice shook as she whispered one word in broken human tongue. Forbidden. Jack frowned, but kept moving. He did not care if the place was cursed. Cursed or not, it was the only path to survival. The tunnel narrowed until Jack had to crawl, the girl clinging tightly to his back. Water splashed behind them, filling the tunnel inch by inch. The sound of rushing liquid grew louder, and panic tightened his chest. If the tunnel flooded before they reached the end, there would be no escape. Don't stop, he told himself, his breath heavy. Just keep going. Finally, the passage opened into a larger chamber. Jack pulled himself out, then lifted the girl onto the stone floor beside him. The room was bigger, but colder, the walls glistening with dripping water. Shadows stretched long, shifting with the flicker of strange glowing fungi along the ceiling. The girl huddled against the wall, hugging her knees, still watching him with suspicion. Her body shook, but not only from the cold, she was afraid of him too, afraid of the human who carried her. Jack noticed her hesitation. He raised his hands slowly, showing he meant no harm. I'm not your enemy, he said softly. If I wanted to hurt you, I would have left you outside. For a long moment she just stared at him, her silver hair dripping water, her glowing eyes filled with doubt. Then slowly she whispered, Why? Save me. Her voice was weak, her human words broken but clear. Jack blinked, surprised she spoke his language at all. Because no one deserves to die alone, he answered. The girl lowered her head, her lips trembling. No one had ever said that to her before. In her world, weakness was shame, and the weak were left behind. But this human had defied that cruel rule, and it shook her heart. Before either of them could speak again, a deep sound rumbled through the chamber. The water burst through the tunnel behind them, flooding into the room with terrifying speed. The girl gasped, clutching Jack's arm, her voice rising in panic. Run! Sit down! He cried, her alien accent thick. Run! Jack grabbed her hand tightly, pulling her toward another dark tunnel at the far side. They had no time to think, no time to doubt. Together, strangers in the dark, they ran toward a fate neither of them could see. The tunnel shook with the force of the rushing water. Every second the roar grew louder, chasing them like a monster determined to drag them back into the flood. Jack gripped the alien girl's small hand tightly, pulling her forward through the uneven stone passage. Her bare feet slipped on the wet ground, but she forced herself to keep moving, gasping for air as fear pressed down on her chest. The air grew heavy, thick with moisture. The walls dripped constantly, and the sound of water slamming against stone filled the space. Jack could feel the air thinning, and he knew what it meant. If the water filled the tunnel completely, there would be no oxygen left, no way to breathe. They had to find higher ground, or they would both drown in the dark. The girl stumbled, nearly falling, but Jack caught her and lifted her onto his back without slowing down. Her arms wrapped weakly around his shoulders, her cold skin pressing against him. She buried her face against his neck, shivering, whispering words in her alien tongue that he could not understand. Still, he understood the meaning. She was terrified, begging not to die. Hold on, Jack muttered, his voice harsh with effort. He felt the water splashing at his legs, rising inch by inch. His muscles ached, but he pushed forward, his mind locked on one thought. Find air, find light, find life. The tunnel narrowed again, sloping upward, but the space was so small he had to crawl. The girl clung to him tighter, her body trembling violently. Behind them, the water surged, filling the passage with a deafening roar. Jack's chest tightened, his lungs burning. The air was running out. He spotted a ledge ahead, a small rise where the stone curved upward, forcing his body forward. He hauled himself up, dragging the girl with him. They collapsed onto the ledge, coughing, sucking. In the thin air, but the water did not stop. It reached their knees, then their waists, climbing higher. The girl clutched Jack's arm, her glowing eyes wide with panic. "Air!" she whispered in broken human tongue, her voice cracking. "No air." Jack pulled her closer, pressing her against his chest as if to shield her from the rising tide. He looked upward, searching for cracks, holes, anything that might lead to the surface. Then he saw it. A thin shaft of light glimmering faintly through the ceiling far above. Hope surged through him, but despair followed just as quickly. The opening was too high, too narrow. Even if they reached it, could they breathe there? Could they survive? Jack clenched his jaw, refusing to give in. "We'll make it," he said firmly. Even if he wasn't sure, the water rose to their chests, cold and merciless. The girl whimpered, her breath short and shallow. She pressed her forehead against Jack's shoulder, as if giving up, but Jack grabbed her face gently, forcing her to meet his eyes. "Don't stop," he told her. "Don't give up. Not now." Summoning his last strength, he boosted her upward, pressing her tiny body against the wet stone. "Climb," he ordered, his voice fierce. She shook her head, terrified. "No. I fall." "Yes, you can," Jack said. "I'll push. You climb. Trust me." Her glowing eyes searched his face, and for the first time, she nodded. She reached upward, her small hands gripping cracks in the stone. Jack pushed her higher, holding her steady even as the water reached his shoulders. His lungs screamed for air, his body begged for rest, but he refused. The girl climbed slowly, inch by inch, until she pressed her face against the narrow shaft above. A gasp escaped her lips. She had found it. There was air. "Breathe," Jack rasped, forcing her upward. She inhaled deeply, her chest rising with new strength. Tears filled her glowing eyes. As she looked down at him, "Your turn," she whispered, reaching her small hand toward him, but the water surged again, pulling at his body, dragging him downward. Jack's vision blurred, his lungs burning with pain. He stared at her hand, glowing faint in the darkness. If he missed it, if he let go, he would be gone forever. With the last of his strength, Jack reached upward. His fingers brushed hers, then locked tightly. The girl's grip was small but fierce. She pulled with everything she had, whispering desperately in her broken voice, "Don't leave me, human. Don't leave." Jack's lungs burned as he clung to the girl's hand. Her grip was trembling, but she refused to let go. With one last desperate pull, she helped him up onto the small stone ledge near the narrow shaft of air. Both of them collapsed side by side, gasping, coughing, drinking in every breath as if it were their last. The shaft above gave them only a thin stream of air, but it was enough to keep them alive for now. The problem was not just the water anymore, it was the cold. Their clothes were soaked through, clinging to their skin, heavy with icy water. The chamber was freezing, every breath like knives in their lungs. Jack could feel his strength draining with each shiver, and he could see the girl trembling violently beside him, her lips turning pale. She hugged herself tightly, her glowing markings flickering faintly. Her eyes looked at Jack with fear, but not just fear of the flood, fear of something else. "Cold. Too cold," she whispered in broken human tongue, her voice weak like fading music. Jack knew the danger well. He had seen it on Earth in mountain storms and winter nights. This was hypothermia, and if they did not act soon, they would both die in the dark. He leaned against the wall, thinking fast. There was only one choice, and it was a hard one. They needed to get out of their wet clothes or the cold would kill them faster than the water ever could. But how could he tell her that? She was already afraid of him, already clinging to her thin dignity in a ruined, flooded tomb. Jack looked at her, his voice low but firm. "If we stay like this, we die," he said. "The water will freeze us from the inside." The girl's eyes widened, her head shaking slowly. She understood enough of his words to know what he meant. Her arms wrapped tighter around her small body, as if protecting herself from him, not just the cold. Jack placed his hands on the stone, keeping them where she could see. "I won't hurt you," he said softly. "I swear it." He spoke slowly, carefully, hoping she would hear the truth in his tone. She stared at him for a long moment, her glowing eyes searching his face. Finally, her lips parted, trembling as she whispered, "You promise?" "I promise," Jack answered without hesitation. Her breathing quickened, her chest rising and falling as she fought between fear and survival. Slowly, painfully, she nodded, her hands moving to the ties of her soaked tunic. Her fingers shook so much she could barely untie it. Jack turned his head away, giving her space, removing his own shirt with stiff, frozen hands. Every movement sent fresh shivers down his spine, his muscles aching from the cold. When he looked back, she was curled up tightly, her thin frame bare against the darkness, her silver hair sticking to her damp skin. Her body was so small, so fragile, it broke something inside him. He pulled off the rest of his heavy clothes, forcing his mind to stay clear. Then, without a word, he wrapped his arms around her, pressing his body heat against hers. She gasped, stiffening at first. But then she melted slowly into him, her head rested against his chest, her breath shallow but steady, her glowing markings pressed against his skin, pulsing faintly like fireflies in the night. It was not enough warmth yet, but it was a start. The two of them shared everything they had. What little body heat remained, Jack whispered softly, almost to himself. You are going to live. I won't let the cold take you. The girl blinked, her eyes glistening with tears she did not let fall. No one had ever said such words to her. No one had ever cared if she lived or died in that frozen chamber, with death pressing in from all sides. Something fragile but powerful sparked between them. It was not trust yet, but it was the beginning of it. The water below surged suddenly, crashing against the ledge, sending icy spray over them both. The girl tightened her arms around Jack, pressing close, whispering in her alien tongue with urgency. He could not understand the words, but he understood the feeling. She was begging him not to let go. Jack held her tighter, his heart beating fast, his breath clouding the air. The flood wanted them, the cold wanted them, but together they refused to surrender. The cold eased only a little as they pressed together for warmth. Jack could feel the alien girl's tiny frame shivering against his chest, but at least her breathing was steadier now. Her glowing markings pulsed faintly, their dim light painting the wet stone around them. In the silence, the sound of dripping water echoed like ticking clocks, each drop reminding them how close death still was. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Jack knew she was afraid, not just of the flood or the cold, but of him. Her people did not trust humans, and she had every reason to fear. Yet, here she was, clinging to him because survival left no other choice. At last, she tilted her head up slightly, her silver hair falling across her damp face. Her voice was barely a whisper, broken but clear in human tongue. You keep promise, she said. Jack met her glowing eyes, his own steady despite the exhaustion. I told you I would, he replied. I don't break promises. Her lips trembled as if she wanted to say more, but she looked away quickly. Still, she did not pull back. She stayed close, sharing warmth in the frozen dark. Slowly, her guard lowered, her breathing calmer now. Jack felt the shift, not just in her body, but in the space between them. It was fragile, like glass, but it was trust beginning to form. He leaned his head back against the stone wall, trying to keep his own strength from failing. His body screamed for rest, for sleep, but he knew if he gave in, the cold would claim him. Beside him, the girl spoke again, her words broken, shaped with effort. My name. Lyra, she said quietly. Jack turned to her, surprised she offered it so freely. Lyra, he repeated softly, the name rolling gently off his tongue. Her eyes flickered, a spark of emotion passing across her face. No one had ever said her name like that, like it mattered. I'm Jack, he said, offering her the same truth. She nodded slowly, whispering his name like it was strange and heavy, but not unpleasant. The sound of it in her soft alien accent made the moment feel almost unreal. For the first time since the flood began, Jack felt a strange calm between them. That calm did not last. From the depths of the water below, a low rumble echoed through the chamber. It was not thunder, not stone shifting. This sound was alive. Jack stiffened, holding Lyra tighter. Her eyes widened, glowing brighter with fear. She whispered quickly in her own tongue, her words sharp with warning. Though Jack could not understand, he knew enough. The water was not empty. Something moved below, something massive, brushing against the stone. The water rippled violently, sending waves crashing against the ledge. Lyra's nails dug into Jack's arm as she pressed closer, trembling. Her voice broke into weak, human words. Beast. In water. Jack's eyes scanned the black surface below, his muscles tense. He could not see it clearly, only shadows and waves, but the sound of its movement was heavy and deliberate. Whatever it was hunting them. He reached for a broken metal rod lying near the stone wall, gripping it tightly. It was not much, but it was something. Lyra's breath came. Fast, her small chest rising and falling against him, her glowing eyes locked on him, desperate. "You fight?" she asked, her voice trembling. Jack looked at her and nodded firmly. "If it comes for us." "I'll fight," he said. She closed her eyes briefly as if in pain, then whispered, "Don't leave. Don't leave me." Jack felt the weight of those words in his chest. This girl, abandoned by her own people, now clung to him, the stranger, the human, because he was the only one who had not let go. He tightened his grip on the metal rod and held her close with his other arm. The darkness shifted again, the water swirling harder. The beast below was moving closer, circling, waiting. The silence between them was gone, replaced by the pounding of their hearts, the drip of water, and the unseen predator rising from the flood. Jack kept his eyes locked on the shadows, his voice steady, even as fear pressed against his ribs. "Stay with me, Lyra," he whispered. "Whatever happens next, stay with me." The water rippled again, deeper this time, as if something huge had stirred just beneath the surface. The chamber was silent except for the splash and echo, but the silence felt worse than any roar. Jack held the metal rod tight, his knuckles white, his body tense. Beside him, Lyra clung to his arm, her glowing eyes fixed on the dark water below. A low growl rumbled through the chamber, not from the air, but from the water itself. It was deep and heavy, vibrating through the stone ledge. Lyra gasped, whispering a word in her alien tongue, her voice sharp with terror. Jack did not need a translation. He already knew. Something alive was hunting them. The surface broke, slow and deliberate. A massive shape rose out of the flood, its body slick and black, glistening in the faint light from the fungus above. Rows of sharp teeth gleamed as the creature opened its mouth, water pouring from between its fangs. Its eyes, glowing faint green, locked on them with hunger. Lyra whimpered, pressing herself into Jack's side. Her small hands clutched his arm like iron. "Beast. Eater," she whispered in broken human tongue. Jack stepped in front of her, raising the sharp rod, his heart pounding so hard it hurt. He had no shield, no real weapon, but he would not let this monster touch her. The beast lunged, water exploding upward as it struck. Jack shoved Lyra back against the wall and swung the rod with all his strength. The metal tore across the beast's snout, and it roared, shaking the chamber. The water churned violently, waves crashing against the ledge. Jack almost slipped, but Lyra grabbed his arm and pulled him back just in time. The creature thrashed, circling, its tail smashing against the stone, breaking chunks free. The chamber groaned under the force, dust and pebbles falling from above. Lyra cried out, covering her head, but her eyes never left Jack. She watched as he stood tall again, rod in hand, ready for the next strike. "Go!" Jack shouted to her, pointing toward the far side of the chamber where another dark tunnel opened. Her eyes widened in panic. "No, not without you," she whispered. The beast lunged again, water crashing over the ledge. Jack stabbed downward, the rod sinking into the soft flesh of the creature's jaw. A shriek filled the chamber, high-pitched and deafening. The monster thrashed, nearly dragging Jack into the flood with it. Lyra screamed his name, her small hands grabbing his wrist, pulling with all her strength. Together, they held against the monster's pull. Blood darkened the water, mixing with the raging current. The beast jerked back, tearing the rod from Jack's hands, disappearing beneath the surface. Silence followed for only a moment. Jack's chest heaved, his body shaking with exhaustion. Lyra pressed against him, clutching his soaked arm, whispering quickly in her language. Her glowing eyes burned with fear and desperation. "It come back," she said, her words broken but sure. "Not gone." Jack knew she was right. The beast was wounded, but it was not dead. It would circle back, angrier, hungrier. He scanned the chamber quickly, searching for anything, any advantage. The only path forward was the tunnel across the water, but to reach it, they would have to swim with the monster waiting below. Jack looked down at Lyra, her tiny frame trembling, her eyes wide. She shook her head before he even spoke, already knowing his thought. "No, No water, she begged. It kill. Jack placed his hands on her shoulders, steady and firm. If we stay here, we die when it comes back, he said, his voice low and hard. Her lips trembled, tears shining in her eyes. Trust me, Jack whispered. Just trust me once more. The water rippled again, the glow of the beast's eyes surfacing at the far side of the chamber. It was watching, waiting, daring them to move. Lyra clutched Jack's arm, her whole body shaking, but then she nodded, whispering softly, I trust. Jack tightened his grip on her hand, pulling her close. On my count, he said, we go together. The beast let out a low growl, circling closer. The water churned, the stone shook, every muscle in Jack's body coiled with tension, every breath was heavy with the weight of survival, and with Lyra's hand in his, he knew. This next moment would decide if they lived or died. The water boiled as the beast rose again, its massive body cutting through the darkness, its glowing green eyes locked on them, its jaws opening wide, rows of teeth glinting with hunger. Jack gripped Lyra's hand tightly, his chest heavy with fear, but his voice was steady. Now, he shouted, pulling her toward the water. Lyra gasped, her body stiff with terror, but she did not resist. Together, they dove from the ledge into the freezing flood. The water swallowed them whole, icy and crushing. Jack kicked hard, his arm wrapped tightly around Lyra to keep her close. She clung to him, her small body trembling, bubbles spilling from her lips as she tried not to scream. The beast lunged, its massive tail slicing the water, sending a current that nearly pulled them back. Jack twisted, dragging Lyra beneath a slab of stone jutting out from the wall. The beast's jaws snapped shut just inches away, the water shaking with the force of it. Lyra's glowing eyes went wide, staring at the sharp teeth that had almost ended them both. Jack's lungs burned, every second under the water a battle against his body's need for air. But he refused to let go, refused to let fear win. The tunnel opening was still ahead, faintly lit by glowing fungi. It was their only chance. The beast roared under the water, the sound rumbling through their bones. It circled back, faster this time, its huge body twisting like a serpent. Jack kicked forward, forcing his body to move, but the water pulled at him like chains. He felt the current drag at Lyra, nearly tearing her from his grip. Her hand slipped, her eyes filled with panic. Jack caught her wrist again, holding on with all his strength. The monster lunged once more, its teeth slicing through the water like blades. Jack grabbed the broken metal rod still floating near them, his fingers closing around it. With a shout lost to the flood, he thrust the rod forward, stabbing deep into the beast's jaw. The water exploded with blood, dark clouds swirling around them. The beast thrashed violently, slamming against the stone walls. The chamber shook, rocks falling from above, waves crashing into Jack and Lyra. Jack wrapped his arm around her small body, protecting her as best he could. She clung to him, whispering in her alien tongue even as the water choked her. Her words were desperate, pleading, but he understood one thing. She was begging him to survive. The beast pulled back, roaring in pain, but it was not finished. Its glowing eyes burned brighter, its rage shaking the water. Jack's chest ached, his lungs screaming for air, his vision blurring. He looked at Lyra, her small face pale, her lips blue. She would not lie. Just another moment, summoning everything he had left, Jack kicked upward, dragging her toward the faint light above. The beast surged after them, jaws wide, tail slashing the water into chaos at the gate. Last second, Jack shoved Lyra upward into the tunnel's opening, her small hands gripping the slick stone. Climb, he shouted through the flood, his voice breaking. She looked down at him, tears mixing with the water. No, not without you, she cried, her voice muffled but clear. The beast rose behind Jack, its shadow falling over them both. Jack turned, rod still clutched in his hand, his body shaking with exhaustion. With a roar of defiance, he drove the rod deep into the creature's eye. The beast shrieked, thrashing wildly, smashing against the chamber walls. The force of its rage shook the entire tunnel, rocks breaking, water surging. Jack was thrown back, his body slamming against the stone, pain exploding through him. The rod snapped in half, but the damage was done. The beast retreated, blinded, its massive body retreating into the dark water below. Jack floated weakly, his vision fading, his body heavy, but then he felt her hands, small but strong, gripping his shoulders, pulling him upward. "Don't leave me," Lyra cried, her voice desperate. "Don't leave." Her glowing markings flickered bright as she pulled with all her strength. Jack's chest burned as he finally broke through the surface, gasping air like fire. They collapsed on the narrow tunnel floor, both coughing, shivering, alive. The water below churned with the beast's retreat, but for now, they had won. Jack lay on his back, his body broken and weak, but his hand still clung to Lyra's, and in that moment he realized she had not let go either, not once. The tunnel walls dripped with water as Jack pulled Lyra forward. Both of them were gasping, their bodies trembling from the fight with the beast. Their clothes hung heavy and torn, their skin raw from the cold. But at least for the moment, the monster was gone. The tunnel sloped upward, each step painful on Jack's legs. Lyra leaned against him, her small body weak but determined. She refused to let go of his hand, her glowing eyes fixed on the faint light ahead. It was not the pale glow of fungus this time, but something brighter, warmer, alive. At the end of the passage, the stone opened suddenly into a vast chamber. Both of them froze, breath caught in their throats. The walls shimmered with veins of crystal, glowing with soft golden light. The air was warmer here, the water shallower, almost gentle compared to the raging flood outside. It felt like stepping into another world. Lyra's eyes widened, her lips parting in awe and fear. She whispered quickly in her alien tongue, her words filled with disbelief. Then, in broken human speech, she said, "Sacred, forbidden." Jack looked at her, his brows furrowed. "What is this place, he asked softly. She hugged herself, trembling, her voice shaking. "Holy place, my people say, never come." Jack's eyes scanned the glowing crystals, noticing how the air felt thick and fresh. He breathed deep, realizing it was not just air, it was rich, almost nourishing. The crystals seemed to breathe with them, releasing warmth and oxygen. He placed a hand on one, feeling the faint hum beneath his skin. "This is what's keeping us alive," he whispered. Lyra shook her head quickly, fear flashing in her eyes. "No, not for us," she said, "for the chosen only." Her glowing markings pulsed faster, betraying her panic. Jack stepped closer, his voice calm but firm. "I don't care what your people say," he told her. "Without this, we're dead." For a moment, silence filled the chamber. Lyra lowered her gaze, her silver hair falling across her face. Her people would cast her out for being here. But deep inside, she knew Jack was right. They were alive because of this place, because fate had pushed them into the forbidden. She stumbled, her knees giving way, and Jack caught her before she high. The ground, he pulled her close, pressing her against one of the larger crystals. Its warmth spread across her cold skin, and she gasped softly, her trembling easing, her eyes closed, her breathing steadier now. Jack stayed beside her, his arms still around her, his own body soaking in the crystal's warmth. For the first time since the flood, they did not feel death pressing down on them. Instead, there was calm, fragile, but real. Jack let his head rest against the stone, exhaustion washing over him. But he forced his eyes to stay open, scanning the chamber. It was too quiet, too still, and he knew danger always waited where silence grew thick. Lyra stirred beside him, her voice soft and uncertain. "You saved me. Many times," she whispered. Jack looked down at her, surprised at her words. "I told you I would," he replied simply. Her glowing eyes met his, and for the first time there was no fear in them, only something gentler, something close to trust. But their peace was short-lived. A low vibration echoed through the chamber, shaking dust from the crystals. The water at their feet rippled, disturbed by something moving deeper within the cave. Lyra's hand tightened around Jack's arm, her face pale. "Not alone," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Something here." Jack rose to his feet, gripping what remained of the broken rod. His jaw tightened, his body aching but ready. Whatever lived in this sacred chamber, whatever guarded these glowing crystals, they would have to face it. He pulled Lyra gently behind him, his voice steady. "Stay close, Lyra. No matter what happens, stay with me." The golden light flickered across the chamber walls. Shadows stretched and shifted. Something was moving in the glow, something watching, waiting. The chamber glowed with golden light, but the beauty did little to ease the fear in their hearts. Jack kept his body in front of Lyra, his broken rod raised like a spear. The rippling water at their feet carried faint vibrations, as if something unseen moved just beneath the surface. Every sound echoed louder than it should. The drip of water, the scrape of stone, the steady beat of their racing hearts. Lyra pressed close behind him, her hands clutching the fabric of his torn shirt. Her glowing eyes scanned the shifting shadows, her breath sharp and uneven. She whispered in her alien tongue, words Jack could not understand, but the tremor in her voice told him she was praying. Jack glanced back at her, his voice low but firm. "I won't let anything take you," he said. Her eyes widened, and for a moment the fear in them softened. The vibrations grew stronger, the water churning slightly as if stirred by a giant tail. Jack's grip tightened on the rod, every muscle in his body coiled with tension. The glow of the crystals flickered, shadows stretching long across the walls. Then, silence. Whatever was there had gone still, waiting, watching. Jack lowered his voice, speaking to Lyra in the quiet. "Why is this place forbidden?" he asked. Her lips trembled, her voice fragile but clear. "My people say, it belonged to gods. Only priest may come. Others, punished." She swallowed hard, her body shaking as if the weight of her words could bring punishment. Even now, Jack frowned, glancing at the crystals, their warmth steady and alive. "Gods or not," he muttered, "this place is saving us." Lyra looked at him, her glowing eyes full of conflict. "No one ever come back who enter," she whispered. "They vanish." Her words hung heavy in the air, pressing on both of them. The silence stretched, broken only by the faint hum of the crystals. Jack looked at her again, studying her small, trembling frame. She had been abandoned, mocked, left behind by her own kind. Yet she had fought, she had survived, and she had stayed at his side even in terror. Something inside him tightened at the thought of losing her. He spoke softly, his voice rough but honest. "Lyra, if I die here, I don't regret it," he said, "because I didn't leave you." Her breath caught, her glowing markings flickering brighter at his words. She stared at him, her eyes wide, shining with something other than fear. Slowly, hesitantly, she reached up and touched his face, her small hand trembling against his cheek. "No one ever say this to me," she whispered, her voice breaking. Her silver hair fell across her face as tears welled in her eyes. "I am weak, unwanted, but you hold me." Jack covered her hand with his own, his touch steady and warm. "You're not weak," he told her. "You're alive, and you're stronger than you know." Her lips trembled into the smallest of smiles, fragile but real. She leaned into him, her forehead resting against his chest. For the first time she allowed herself to breathe without fear, but the moment did not last. The water surged suddenly, waves crashing against the stone as something massive moved beneath. The chamber shook, crystals rattling, the golden glow flickering wildly. Lyra gasped, clutching Jack tightly, fear flooding her eyes again. "It come back," she whispered, her voice breaking. Jack pulled her close, his jaw tight, his body ready. He looked at the dark water where ripples spread like the breath of a predator. Whatever was beneath them had been waiting, watching, and now it was rising. He pressed Lyra against the crystal wall, his voice steady even as fear coiled in his chest. "Stay behind me, no matter what." Lyra's tears glistened in the golden glow, but she nodded, her voice soft but unshaken. "I trust you," she said, her words clear this time. Jack felt the weight of that trust more than the weapon in his hand. The water churned, the shadows twisted, and the monster stirred once more. The final battle was coming, and in the glow of the sacred chamber, their fates were bound together. The chamber shook as the water churned violently. From the dark flood below, the monster rose again, its massive body glowing faint green in the light of the crystals. Its single blinded eye leaked dark blood, but its other eye burned with fury. It roared, the sound shaking the stone walls, spraying water across Jack and Lyra. Jack stepped forward, his broken rod raised, though his arms shook with exhaustion. Behind him, Lyra pressed her back against the glowing crystals, her tiny hands clutching the stone for strength. Her glowing eyes never left him, her lips trembling as she whispered his name. The beast lunged, its jaws wide, teeth like blades ready to tear him apart. Jack waited until the last moment, then leapt to the side. The monster smashed against the stone, shattering smaller crystals, sending shards flying. The water exploded upward, waves slamming against them both. Lyra cried out, shielding her face, her body trembling. Jack gripped a crystal shard in his hand, sharp and glowing faintly with energy. He felt it hum in his palm, alive, powerful. The beast turned, its massive head swinging toward him, rage shaking the chamber. Jack tightened his grip on the shard, his jaw set. "This ends now," he muttered. The monster lunged again, its teeth snapping shut. Jack charged forward, the shard clutched like a dagger. At the last instant, he drove it deep into the beast's remaining eye. A deafening shriek filled the chamber, so loud the crystals shook violently, cracks spreading along the walls. The beast thrashed wildly, its body smashing into the stone, its tail breaking pillars. The golden crystals flickered and pulsed as if responding to the violence. Jack was thrown backward, crashing into the shallow water, his breath torn from his chest. Lyra screamed, running to him, her small hands grabbing his arm desperately. The monster writhed in pain, then collapsed into the water, its massive body sinking. Darkness swallowed it, the flood finally still. For a moment, silence fell, broken only by Jack's ragged breaths and Lyra's sobs. They had survived the impossible, but the chamber around them groaned dangerously. Cracks split the ceiling, stones crashing down into the glowing water. The crystals pulsed faster, brighter, as if alive, as if warning them. Jack staggered to his feet, pulling Lyra close. "We have to get out," he said, his voice rough but firm. She nodded quickly, tears streaking her pale face. Together they ran toward the far wall, where a faint draft of fresh air whistled through a jagged crack. The chamber collapsed behind them, the roar of falling stone chasing their steps. Jack pushed Lyra through first, then forced his own body into the narrow opening. They crawled through darkness, the air growing fresher, warmer. Finally, they burst out into the open night sky, collapsing onto wet grass. The storm had passed, the flood receding, the stars glowing bright above the ruined valley. Jack lay on his back, gasping, the cool air burning his lungs but filling him with life. Beside him, Lyra curled against his chest, her glowing eyes staring up at the stars. Her voice was soft, fragile, but full of something new. "You saved me. Again and again," she whispered. Jack turned his head, his tired eyes meeting hers. "I told you, I don't leave people behind," he said. Her lips trembled, tears glistening as she pressed her forehead against his. "My life, my heart, now yours," she whispered, her alien accent broken but true. Jack froze at her words, his chest heavy with emotion. He tightened his arms around her, his voice quiet, steady. "Then we face whatever comes next, together." The ruined valley stretched around them, the crystal's faint glow still visible deep beneath the earth. The flood had taken much, but it had given them something greater, not just survival, but a bond no force could break. A human and an alien girl, once strangers, now bound by fire, water, and trust. As dawn rose on the horizon, the first light touching their faces, Lyra whispered one final word, clear and unbroken. "Together." And Jack answered without hesitation, "Together."